Hey, shalom, shalom. All right, before I get started with this lesson today, I just want to give all praises, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakhakwadash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who rule well, and peace and salutations unto the elect. All right, now in this lesson, all right, Lord willing, it's a quick lesson. All right, but in this lesson, I wanted to go into the apocrypha and how the apocrypha is a part of the Bible, the Old Testament and the New Testament. You see, it's a part of the Bible. All right, but you'll have people, all right, mainly Christians, they'll say that the apocrypha is not a part of the Bible or that it's not canon. You see, but indeed, the apocrypha is a part of the Bible and it is canon, man. This is a part of the Bible, part of the Old Testament and New Testament. It goes to Old Testament, the apocrypha, and the New Testament. You see, and I'm going to prove that the apocrypha is valid, all right, today in this lesson through the Holy Scriptures. So let's get into it. And just a side note, now, just a little before I get into it, if the apocrypha, all right, is not canon or not a part of the Bible, why did you have Yahweh Shai, whom this world ignorantly calls Jesus? His true name is Yahweh Shai. Why did you have Yahweh Shai in John 10 and 22 celebrate the Feast of Dedication? You see, and the Feast of Dedication goes back into 1 Maccabees, the 4th chapter. And now we're going to get history on 1 Maccabees, the 4th chapter, going into the Feast of Dedication, on how the temple was rededicated after the heathen had desecrated it. All right, so let's get into it. So it says, 1 Maccabees 4 and 54. It says, look at what time and what day the heathen had profaned it. Right, the temple. They profaned the temple. And we're going to get into the history on what they were doing, on how they profaned the temple. It says, even in that was it dedicated with songs and cisterns and harps and cymbals. 55. Then all the people fell upon their faces, worshiping and praising the God of heaven, who had given them good success. Talking about the Israelites. And so they kept the dedication of the altar 8 days and offered burnt offerings with gladness and sacrificed the sacrifice of deliverance and praise. You see? So this was a joyous time. All right, a good, this is one of the 7 high holy days, all right, that the Israelites, the Israelites, we celebrate. You see, this is a time of rejoicing, all right, in victory, all right, over our enemy. So read it again. It says, and so they kept the dedication of the altar 8 days and offered burnt offerings with gladness and sacrificed the sacrifice of deliverance and praise. The Israelites did. They decked also the forefront of the temple with crowns of gold and with shields, and the gates and the chambers they renewed, and hanged doors upon them. Verse 58, thus was there very great gladness among the people, for that the reproach of the heathen was put away. Right, so this was one of those high holy days where it was a time of rejoicing, all right, gladness, you see, and victory over the heathen. All right, because look, it says the reproach of the heathen was put away. Right, we rededicated, all right, the temple after the heathen, all right, had desecrated it, man. All right, verse 59, it says, moreover, Judas and his brethren with the whole congregation of Israel ordained that the days of the dedication of the altar should be kept in their season from year to year by the space of 8 days from the 25th day of the month Caselu, with mirth and gladness. Right, so as I said before, this is a high holy day of mirth and gladness, all right, for the rededication of the altar, man. Verse 60, at that time also they builded up the Mount Sion with high walls and strong towers round about, lest the Gentiles should come and tread it down as they had done before. Right, the Gentiles, the heathen. Verse 61, and they set there a garrison to keep it, and fortified Bethshura to preserve it, that the people might have a defense against Idumea. And Idumea is a Greek way of saying Edom. Esau Edom, which is the so-called white man today. All right. So just going into the history of the Feast of Dedication. All right. Let's get into ChatGPT because ChatGPT, it gives a lot of good information, man. All right. Now it says the desecration by Antiochus the fourth Epiphanes, 167 BCE. Who? Antiochus the fourth Epiphanes, a Seleucid Greek king. What happened? He outlawed Jewish practices, circumcision, Sabbath, etc. Right, and Antiochus is known, all right, for his persecution of the Israelites. All right, basically the Hellenization of the Israelites, forcing them to adopt the Greek way, or if you don't, you will be put to death. It says he desecrated the temple by, and we're getting into it. Why? How the heathen desecrated the temple. It says erecting an altar to Zeus in the temple. Zeus is an idol. That desecrates the temple, man. It says sacrificing unclean animals like pigs on the altar, man. You can't do that. It says biblical reference. This is described in 1 Maccabees 1 and 41 to 64 and foreshadowed in Daniel the 11th response. This triggered the Maccabean revolt, and that's where you have 1 Maccabees and 2 Maccabees. This is important history that the Christians leave out. When you deny the apocrypha, you're leaving out important information, important history. You see, and this happened. Verse 2, rededication. This is where you get the Feast of Dedication, man. Led by Judas Maccabeus, and the Hasmoneans event. After reclaiming Jerusalem, the Jews cleansed and rededicated the temple. You see, this became the origin of Hanukkah, the Feast of Dedication. You see, so this is the origin of the Feast of Dedication. All right, in 1 Maccabees 4, as I just read. All right, so now going into that history, let's get John 10 and 22, going back into what I said at the beginning. If the Apocrypha is not a part of the Bible, why in the New Testament do you have our Lord Yahushua coming, all right, into the Feast of Dedication? Let's get it. All right, it says, let's see. John 10 and 22. And it was at Jerusalem, the Feast of the Dedication, and it was winter. All right, and there you go. All right, there you go. We just went into the history of the Feast of Dedication. It goes all the way back until the Maccabean Revolt, 1 Maccabees and 2 Maccabees. The Feast of Dedication, all right, after the heathen had desecrated the temple, it was then a rededication of that temple, and that was to serve as a high holy day, all right, to be observed, to be honored with mirth and gladness. You see, and it was the okay, right? So it says John 10:22, and it was at Jerusalem, the Feast of Dedication. So it mentions the Feast of Dedication in the New Testament. And it was winter, which knowing that the Feast of Dedication is celebrated during the winter. You see? 23, it says, and Yahushua walked in the temple in Solomon's porch. You see? And then came the Jews round about him and said unto him, how long dost thou make us to doubt? If thou be Hamashiach, tell us plainly. And Yahushua answered them, I told you, and ye believe not. The works that I do in my Father's name, they bear witness of me. Right, so that was pretty much the point. All right, in verse 22, man. All right, so the Apocrypha is a part of the Bible, man. The Apocrypha is canon, man. When you say that the Apocrypha is not a part of the Bible, all right, you lack understanding. You lack, all right, knowledge of history. You see? But with that, I just want to give all praises, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham Rakhakwadash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who rule well, and peace and salutations